Now, when you think of British culture, it's quite easy to go straight to, James Bond or Adele or Downton Abbey. But a new trend on TikTok called British Core is bringing some more unexpected and I would say mundane aspects of the UK to the world's attention.
Yes, it's all about celebrating the ordinary, from Greggs to a Tesco run. Take a listen to this. It's a US content creator.
Here are some of the things that I want to do when I come over to London/Manchester. I want a actual pint of Guinness, and I want to split the G with some people, all right? Some mates. That's all I want to do. And while I'm in South London, I want to go get some Jamaican jerk, Jamaican cuisine, Jamaican scran, yeah? I want to walk into a place and say, yo, wagwan bossy. Yeah, let me get some jerk and a beef patty in it. Then I want to go to a proper pub, either get fish and chips, Sunday roast, what is it, a pie, beef pie or something, mash? Yeah, something like that in a really nice pub. Supposedly in central London, they have crazy pubs. Super nice.
Well, look, I hate him.
I like the guy.
Well, good.
I'd take him round the capital.
That's good. That's good BBC balance then. When I'm in London/Manchester, yes, fine. Well, earlier on, I spoke to Jonathan Thomas, who runs the website Anglotopia.net and has written a couple of books about being an Anglophile. And I started off by asking him what sparked his love of British culture, what drew him to us.
It's because British stuff is everywhere in American culture, and I grew up with Roald Dahl stories, with Winnie the Pooh, British TV shows, and British movies, and I've always just had an affinity for British things, and it's hard to avoid when you're growing up in America that we share these common cultural things back and forth, and I'm sure Brits grow up with American TV shows and the vice versa.
I suppose what's interesting as well, certainly from a British perspective, is you assume that American culture is going to be sort of similar to British culture, and then you go to America and meet Americans, you're like, oh no, this is completely different. Presumably it's the same in the other direction as well.
It's usually when Americans visit Britain for the first time, they get a bit of a shock because they think, media prepares them for a certain way from movies and TV shows, and then it's completely different. And, we kind of think that our cultures are very similar, but they're so different that the differences become fascinating endlessly because there's so many minute differences.
And so what has sparked this new wave of interest in British core?
I think it's just because people are searching for things that are comforting, that are interesting, and that are want to experience another way of life. And this is a way to kind of do something accessible because, Brits speak English. We have a shared culture and a shared history. So it seems somewhat accessible. And then when you travel there, these are easy experiences to have because they're everyday experiences for British people.
Now, if this was British people sort of fetishizing the mundane, because it is the mundane that seems to be taking people particularly in another culture, I would assume that we were doing it with irony. But because it's Americans doing it, I know that you're not doing it ironically, and you actually do like this mundane stuff.
Yeah, we do it with enthusiasm. But
yes.
I think you're right. And that's the differences between American humor and British humor, is that we're much more earnest when it comes to these things.
So what are some of your favourite facets of British culture then? What's fascinated you over the years?
Definitely the history, but also it's the experiences I've had traveling there. And I just love middle class British pursuits, like going to a stately home on a weekend and having a cup of tea in the cafe and then having a Sunday roast and just having a lovely grand day out. And it's things like that. Tea is very popular here with Anglophiles. We love brewing a pot of proper tea and trying all the different varieties. And I do think that there's this element of that.
Because it's interesting. The stuff that you pick out there does feel very British, but it feels like a very specific subset of British culture. It's a very sort of middle class, sort of slightly middle-aged set of pursuits. And British culture is so much wider than that. Like, there's so much culture in Britain.
Right, and that's what was really amusing about all the British core videos, is they kind of ran the gamut of cultural experiences from different classes and different subcultures.
Have you seen a sort of evolution in the things that that Anglophiles in America are interested in about British culture?
Yeah, and I think it comes in waves based on what British TV shows and movies are very popular. You know, when Downton Abbey was still airing on TV, everybody loved Downton Abbey. Everybody watched it on PBS, and then we went and saw the movie. And or when about 10 or 15 years ago, Doctor Who was really, really big, much bigger than it is now, and people would identify with that. There were even Doctor Who conventions. So it comes in waves, I'd say.
How many times have you actually visited the UK?
At least 25 at last count.
Oh, wow. You really love it.
Yeah, and I'll be there in October, so I'll be up for my 26th trip.
And are you still finding new stuff to enjoy?
Constantly. You know, we try to do new things every time we go, but we also try to do our favorite things, and we can never run out of things to do. I've got my office here, which I like to call the British Embassy in Indiana, where we're based, is filled with British books and travel guides.
And so where have you been? All over the UK?
Yeah, I've been to all the countries of the UK, and most recently in 2018, we drove from Land's End to John O'Groats and saw everything along. Yeah.
Well, we look forward to welcoming you back in October. Cheers, Jonathan.
Well, thank you so much.
That was Jonathan Thomas, who runs the website Anglotopia.net. Impossible to question his love of Britain, I think.
I thought it was a very kind of politely British sign-off there as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah. It's sort of bleeding into him slowly. We're having loads of great texts about your sort of top 5 quintessential